that's what we got. Have a look. Nice biscuits, nice rise. Right? Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and today I'm going to make sourdough biscuits. Now, since the beginning of COVID-19 and all that stuff, there's been a lot of people learning how to use sourdough, how to make sourdough bread. But one of the first things you learn when you start becoming a sourdough person, you have a store of sourdough in your fridge, is that pretty much every week you got to do something with it. And maybe you don't feel like making bread every week. And so you can make waffles. I got a video on how to do that. Of course, bread. You can make pancakes, you can make biscuits. And I would argue that biscuits are about the fastest and easiest thing you can make using the sourdough. And if your family's anything like mine, you probably have soup once a week anyway, because you just use up everything in the fridge and make a soup or something like that. You know, beans, soup, one of those sort of, stick to your ribs, hearty, sort of old school sort of things. So I'm gonna make some sourdough biscuits here, and you're gonna see how quick and easy this is. So first things first is you turn the oven on to 400, all right, 400. Now the challenge for making this is getting it all mixed up and cut and on the cooking thing before the oven heats up. If you do everything right, you can do it that quickly. Let's see how well I can do that here while I'm talking through the process. So ingredients, you need 1.5 cups of flour, just regular, white flour. 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You can use a teaspoon of salt. I usually go somewhere in between 1/2 and a whole teaspoon of salt. I kind of like things salty. 3 teaspoons of sugar. That's your dry ingredients. And then 1/3 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of the sourdough starter, and an egg. Notice there's no milk in this, and no butter. It's really quick. So it's almost like a cake, but it's going to come out a nice, soft, fluffy biscuit. So let's get our flour in here. So I got 1 cup and 1/2 cup, 1.5 cups of flour. It's a bit light. There we go. Okay. And then we're going to add, let's do this in order here. 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, right? 2.5, yep. This is baking powder, so 1, 2, and 1/2. And 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. I notice I'm not being as precise as one should be, but cake or baking like this is an act of chemistry, so you should be as precise as you can get it. Okay, 3 teaspoons of sugar. You can use less sugar. I found this is just right for me and wife and kids and the way they react to it. And 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm going to use like a heaping 1/2 teaspoon, okay? All right, and in terms of tools, all you need to make this is a fork. I mean, this is something you're whipping up a soup and, you think, oh, we need something to sort of stretch this soup out, right? It just adds a little bit of starch to your meal and gets everybody, full, right? Whatever. Sometimes I make these early. Some mornings I make omelets for everybody. And I'll get up a bit earlier and put these in the oven so that we've got like omelets and fresh biscuits with jam and butter and that sort of thing, right? Okay, so I've combined those things enough, I think. And what I like to do is just take the bowl and tap it a bit so that the stuff's sort of on one side. Just gently set it down. So all the dry is sort of on the side of the bowl. It was just a quick way to throw things together. Now we're going to add our wet. So we're going to put an egg in here. Right, 1 egg. Notice I'm not mixing everything separately. I'm just throwing it all in there, and it'll work. Don't worry about it. I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of starter. Just stir that around a little bit just to make sure it's all. Sometimes your starter will separate. Okay, so that's half a cup. I thought I had a teaspoon here somewhere. I'll use the fork, I guess. Half a cup of starter. And that's why this has half a teaspoon of baking soda. I find anything you're cooking with sourdough starter, if you're using a sort of chemical leavening process, like sourdough starter is a yeast, but it's also acidic. So if you add baking soda to it, it creates a chemical leavening, as opposed to, if you're just using yeast, you're getting a biological leavening. Okay, so that's half a cup of starter. Now we need 1/3 of a cup of oil. I'm using a dry measure for my oil, I know, but it works out fine. For certain things, you need to be extremely fussy with these measurements, but for this recipe, you don't. All right, someone's going to be like, "You're using a dry measure for your wet ingredients." Yeah, it works out fine. Okay, now let me show you how I'm going to mix this up and bring the camera in a little closer. All right, so you can see here, I've got dry and wet over here. Okay, so I'm going to stab the egg. I hope you can see that, and I'm just going to start. Just gently combining the wet ingredients. The sourdough, the egg, and the oil, okay? Now, so I'm just going to combine those. I'm not bringing in the dry yet, right? It's just less dishes to clean up if you do it this way, okay? And I'm going to whip that for a little bit just to get some air into it. Okay, now, the reason I like this recipe, I'm lactose intolerant, so the traditional recipe I would have used, you'd use butter or buttermilk, and it would either use buttermilk and baking soda or milk and baking powder. Neither of those two things work for me anymore, and I've just learned ways to work around it. So this is what I do. But, even if you are a person that can have milk, like my mother can have milk. She loves these biscuits. And she eats she can eat whatever she wants. She likes these. So yeah, they're good. So now you can see I'm starting to bring the flour in, right? Just every once in a while, using the fork to bring a little bit over. I find a whisk is kind of clumsy for this. I find the fork is more, what would you say, nimble. Whoop. Of course. Just as I said nimble, I made a mess. But anyway, just try to keep working it around. There should be, you'd probably want to use large eggs for this. This recipe works with the size of eggs I tend to get. I get them from a guy, a friend of mine down the road sort of thing. He has his own chickens. But I guess if you were buying eggs in a grocery store, these would be large eggs. Okay, you see how it's starting to come together. I just find these ratios work. And this is a recipe I just worked out myself, trying to figure out a way to do it without a sourdough biscuit, or basically a biscuit that doesn't use milk that tastes good. Because all the milk substitutes, none of them taste like milk, right? So, if you're using coconut milk, you're going to have coconut biscuits. Soy milk, you're going to have soy biscuits, and so on and so forth. I wasn't satisfied with any of them, and this is so much cheaper. Now, this wouldn't work if you were a vegan, I guess, because there's an egg in there. But anyway, now you start to mix this. If you were vegan, I'd just put an egg's worth of whatever fake milk you like in there. It'll still work out. You don't really, egg adds flavor, and I like it. But you can get by without the egg. You just put an egg's worth, like an ounce of, whatever, fake milk you like. So I'm just working this around with my hand, not too much. You just work it around until it's all come together and one thing. The oven's at 330. It needs to be up to 400. So will we beat the oven? Will he do it? All right, so I think I got this where I want it. You don't want to over knead it, okay? So I'm going to a little bit of flour here on the counter, like so. There's different ways to do this, and my mom actually does this with a muffin tin. I don't. I prefer it like this. You do whatever you want. You just take this, put a little bit of flour on top, flour your hands. And I find like the first knuckle on my thumb is about the right. You know, the thicker you make this, the higher your biscuits are going to be when they rise. So, you know, about an inch, what's that? 3 centimeters, give or take, right? So you don't need a rolling pin, you don't need anything fancy, just like that, okay? Now you take, this is just a tomato paste can. This is what I've always used. I'll make this a little flatter here. Not too much. You want some height. All right, and you just work your way around. A little bit of flour on that. Work your way around. A little more flour. A little more flour. See how quick this is? Okay, so there's our first biscuits. I'm just going to put them on this, actually a pizza pan. It's the kind, I don't know what this is called, bake something. It's got holes in it, so it allows the air, heated air, to sort of rise through it. Anyway, combine these little pieces again. All right, probably be able to get maybe 3 out of that, maybe. There's one. It's a bit of a mess there, but anyway, there's 2. You can't cut them all. It doesn't really matter. I kind of like the weird looking ones anyway. Roll it around a little bit. Like that. The last one's always a bit weird. Don't worry about it. All right. All right, so the oven literally just beeped as I was repositioning the camera. So literally, I got this all, you know, set up and done in the time it took for the oven to heat up. However long that was. Felt like 5 minutes, maybe it was 10 minutes, I don't know. That's how long it takes to make these. Now you're gonna stick them in the oven for, I mean, depending on where you are, 11 minutes, 12 minutes, maybe more if you're, you know, really far above sea level. I'm pretty close to sea level here, maybe 200 meters above at the most. So in she goes at 400 degrees for about 12 minutes. I'll see you in a little bit. All right, so it's been 12 minutes. Let's take these out and have a look. It's actually been about 13 because it took me a minute to get the camera gear all set up. Anyway, that's what we got. Have a look. Nice biscuits, nice rise, right? Not too brown on the bottom, right? I went a minute too long, but anyway, that's fine. You break them open. Let's see here. Oh yeah. Smells like biscuits. Now, one thing about these, I mean, so what you might have noticed if you've made biscuits before is normally when you use butter, you have to cut the butter in, which is a tedious process, almost like making pastry. With this, we don't have to do anything like that. It's much more like making a cake recipe, but they have the same texture as biscuits that have had butter cut in. But another thing I've found is that biscuits that are made with the butter and they're cut in, they tend to be extraordinarily good when they're fresh. But, you know, a few hours later or a day later, they're not nearly as good. These ones seem to really hold their texture and flavor. Maybe even I like them after they've cooled. I mean, they're good fresh. Let's have one here. But I also like them after they've cooled down. I like them the day later. You know, I'm kind of cool with whatever where these are concerned. But, yeah, let's give one a try. A bit hot, but. Oh, man. Yeah. So, yeah, look at that rise. Right? That's how you want your biscuits to turn out. Right? And they taste good. Man, I can't wait to get some fresh strawberry jam on this. It's gonna be great. Anyway, homemade sourdough biscuits, easy to do, didn't take long at all, fresh. And this is something I would whip up. I would come home from work. I mean, I have a regular, you know, full-time job just like you. I got to commute. I got no problem. I come home from work, whip a batch of these up to go with soup. You know, it just adds that nice, homey, you know, someone cares about you element to a meal. Someone takes how long did that take? A few minutes to make nice, hot, fresh, tasty biscuits. You know, really, it's just bread and water, but it's the star of the show. So anyway, sourdough biscuits. Doesn't take long, tastes great, stretches out a meal, and can make an otherwise mundane weekday soup dinner a little bit more enjoyable. Just gives it a little bit of extra, I don't know, whatever you want to call that, a little bit of extra specialness to a meal. So hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to click the bell so you're notified when I make new videos. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden, have fun in your kitchen. Thanks for watching.